Welcome to Momentum, and thanks for coming on a lovely evening in Newcastle with a bit of fog. Tim's already moaning about the temperature. What was it?
I live in the north in Leicestershire, and I come up here and it's something cold out.
Leicestershire's not the north, that's like miles down.
That's where London are.
Yeah, you're halfway up. So yes, welcome to the facility that we've got here. And we just wanted to really showcase the best way of what we do in here, and one of the best ways was to have these guys come along who I've known for varying amounts of time but have worked with over the years. So obviously you guys have sort of got a pretty strong interest in triathlon as a sport, so what we're going to do tonight is kind of run through a bit of a plotted history of careers and what has happened over the years to both of them. For some people might take longer than others, but you know, we'll kind of try and drag a few things together and chat through. So first of all, I mean, Momentum here, you've managed to find it okay. Basically, we have a facility here where we have a pretty big multidisciplinary team where we can help you achieve your goals, whether that's in triathlon or any other sport. What we have as a team of strength and conditioning coaches, so this facility that we have around us here, we are able to design programs around whatever your goals are. Also from a rehabilitation point of view, we've got a team of physiotherapists and sports therapists which we can tap in, do a lot of rehab in here. A couple of people have been in for rehab today with my colleague Carl over there, and they will certainly tell you that their rehab session is harder than a lot of training sessions that you might do. So some of the physio stuff here is, you know, it's tailored around what you need to do. It's not always about lying on a bed, although there is some of that. Just to introduce the people on either side of me, obviously a lot of you will know who these guys are, seeing as you jumped on buying the tickets when we put them out there. So Dan on my right here, so we'll go with the youngest ones first. So Dan is a meager 20 years old, I believe, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Who has had his sort of a bit of a breakthrough year this year in triathlon terms. Probably coincided with the fact that he started training with us about 12 months ago, so you know,
that's the only reason.
Yeah. The only reason, obviously. So he has jetted off to the States for quite a bit in between times. So in terms of results this year, you've had sort of a bit of a breakthrough year in a lot of ways, haven't you? So you know, he was, what place did he get in the Commonwealth Games? Was 12th?
12th in Commies, yeah.
12th in Commonwealth Games, 4th in the Arena Games?
Yeah, in Singapore. That was earlier in the year.
Good. Under 23s Euros this year?
Yeah, podium there, silver
Podium.
medal. And then, yeah, went on the Super League circus with...
This
Professional tour.
managed by the most professional manager?
Yeah. So this year, no, Tim was good, and yeah, no, it's been a really, really good year, and yeah, plenty of ups and downs, but generally on the whole, a breakthrough. Learning
experience.
Yeah, 100%.
But you're kind of local to the area, obviously.
Yeah.
So you know a fair few people sort of from the local triathlon scene. But where are you basing yourself mostly now?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's going to be more and more in the States now. Between kind of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Arizona. But obviously, yeah. I mean, I've been brought up and born around Morpeth, which is obviously just north of here. So, yeah, that's been my base for probably, well, I mean, my whole career so far. But yeah, it's starting to move further afield now. So yeah.
Good stuff. And obviously Tim on my left here. So 3 times at the Olympics, 4 times a world champion. Used to be Ironman world record holder.
There's a downhill swim for Christian.
Yes, so I believe. Ironman world record holder, so it's time is 7 hours, 40 minutes and 23 seconds, which is...
Too long.
Too long.
I want to get the Ironman over as quick as possible.
Absolutely. So we've known each other for sort of I was trying to work it out. Actually, it was, I think the first race that I went to with British Triathlon when I was physio with those guys was in 2006, which was when Tim won World Championships in Lausanne, when it was Quattro Formaggi the night before was the first time. So
Quattro Formaggi.
Quattro Formaggi, yeah. So for your pre-race meal. So
Four cheeses pizza.
And we've kind of sort of, depending on where you've been based in the world, we've sort of worked alongside each other through a few ups and downs. And
a good place. If I was in Stellenbosch, you'd come and visit. Boulder, some of the other places.
Leicester wasn't keen on Boulder. So we had a good few trips out of going to South Africa, and obviously with Retool and the bike fitting side of things, we're based in Boulder, so it kind of coincided nicely when I went over there and was able to work with Tim alongside the bike fit side of stuff that we did at that particular time. So you've had a few smaller and some bigger injuries that's over the years, which we'll probably come across in the next little while. So we'll kind of just chat through things, and then we'll open it up to having questions from you guys maybe at the end. So if you've thought of some intriguing questions that you can ask these guys, then feel free to jump in, but we'll open up to the floor at the end of our little chat through. So I suppose starting from the beginning for both of you, you're kind of sort of slightly different ends of the triathlon spectrum. Whatever that works. Kind of coming in at one end, dropping off the other end. So a trifecta, I suppose we call you now, as opposed to someone who's kind of coming up through and trying to make a name for himself. But I suppose in terms of getting into triathlon at a young age, if you can remember that far back. I mean, I swam on the tour because it's kind of even though quite a bit. But because you were based in London at the time, and in terms of the sports that you did that sort of, I suppose, got you into the beginnings of triathlon. When did triathlon sort of even enter your radar as a thing?
It was pretty late because there wasn't TriStar 1, 2, 3. That didn't exist then. So I used to run a lot. Where I grew up was in a place called Hampton, Teddington, Twickenham Rugby Ground, near there, right under there. And I was just really fortunate that I swam before school when I was at 10, 11. I really enjoyed swimming, learned how to swim really young. Loved riding my bike, did a paper round. And then when I went to secondary school, so when I was 11, 12, I got into running. They said, he wanted, all my mates wanted a football to play with from the PE department at break time, and our PE teacher was this old man called Flossie, big flossy eyebrows, and he used to grab me like this, and go, "Little Timmy Don, are you going to run for me?" And I'm like, "Oh yes, can you give us a football, give us a football." And that's how I got into running, and he said, "Join the local run club," and I did, and there were these two lads there, Sam and Ben, and they ended up going to my school, and both of them went to Commonwealth Games, represented Great Britain for track and field, and then 3 years later, I still wasn't into triathlon. I was running, and then there was this new kid that his English wasn't very good, but he was an amazingly fast runner, and that was Mo Farah. And he joined my run, or not my run, but yeah, he joined my run group. He joined. It was then called Hounslow, but now it's Hounslow, Windsor, Slough, and Eton. So I was fortunate. I grew up in this area of kind of endurance, and I was the swim squad. I was in the B squad, and there was this A squad. And as we got out, they got in. They were a bit older. And there was this guy, and he would always run halfway down the pool and dive in, and the coach would just shout his name, and he'd go, "Spencer!" And if anyone knows history in triathlon, anyone know who I'm talking about? Spencer Smith. So again, I was just fortunate that Spencer Smith, and I remember coming out swimming once, he had this big hair, convertible Mercedes, and this was back in the early 90s, and he got this pink bike out with tri-spokes on. I didn't know what they were called. I was like, what does he do? And it was triathlon. So there was a local swimming pool, Hampton Open Air, Thames Turbo, one of the big triathlon clubs down from London. They had a club session on a Thursday night, and I went there, and the rest is history. I was 14 at the time, and then later that year, I got my first GB vest as a youth. So
got spotted. Yeah,
pretty lucky. But again, it was bizarre how different it is now. It's very much manufactured. Sorry, mate. Their talent ID from such a young age, but back then there was no, when I represented Great Britain as a youth, we had to pay for the flight, so I had to buy the team kit at a discounted rate. The training camp was 2 days at Stoke Mandeville, which was then the British Olympics, the Paralympic Association headquarters, because they had loads of dorms. Well, now they're jet setting to Stellenbosch, I don't know where else, they've been camps, Lanzarote, all over the world.
You didn't have tri-suits then either, did you?
No, oh no, we had little Speedo 2000s, and we'd have a little vest that would roll down, and kind of like, as we're running out, it was budgie smugglers or...
Yeah. So a bit different back in the 90s. So in terms of, I suppose, where you entered triathlon as a, obviously you've got a pretty strong background in swimming and...
Yeah, 100%. I wasn't probably quite as luxury as Tim and growing up around world champions and the like. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously exceptionally fortunate, and you know, there's different routes for everyone into the sport. I mean, like, obviously it's no secret to probably most of you guys sitting here that, like, obviously my dad used to do triathlon. He's sitting over there, not that he'll want to be called out, but yeah. So again, I mean, I was into swimming and biking and running and all sorts. He had me doing everything basically from a young age. Yeah, like, obviously I think for me, I was doing all three sports. I did pretty much everything you could imagine I did from a young age. And yeah, like, by the time I kind of turned old enough, as Tim says, like, I was fortunate enough to be in the Moray system, and yeah, you had TriStar Racing. Ian and Tracy here were the coaches, and yeah, like, you know, I basically entered that system, and that was basically because of my dad influence. And yeah, I did my first triathlon in Darlington at the school there, so that was I can't quite remember 10 years ago now, but yeah, to see it change from then as well is absolutely amazing now when you go to these local triathlons. But yeah, it kind of, you know, from there it just progressed. And yeah, the opportunity, I guess, unlike for Tim, was that there was more of a system, a process, and you know, I was able to basically just progress through that over the years. But yeah, one thing I was definitely fortunate to have around me was, like, just exceptionally good role models around me. You know, like, I certainly didn't have any world-class, you know, triathletes to train with, but you know, I had any of you might know the great Jim Alder, who was Commonwealth Games marathon champion. You know, I had people like that surrounding me who, you know, give me guidance, give me help, and obviously, you know, people in the in the crowd as well who, you know, give me plenty of guidance and help as well when I was young. And I think, yeah, like, all of that's kind of led over the years to a pretty natural development. But yeah, no, it's been an interesting journey to getting here from starting out in Morpeth, where really, you know, there is no triathletes as such, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, other than my dad.
No triathletes. Yeah. So going back to when did you first go to? Because obviously you had a different system that you went through, but you ended up in South Africa when you were quite young, though, didn't you?
Yeah, so I finished school after A levels, and I got a place at university, but I took a gap year, and as soon as I finished my A levels, I got a train to the south of France with one of my friends, and then we went. Friends of ours had a place there, so I could train in the south of France. Did a load of racing over there, because you can race on a Saturday and a Sunday in France. So if you race well on a Saturday, you can have pizza from the pizza van Saturday night. If not, it's a can of tomato soup on your pasta. And I promise you, you're sleeping on the train station to get the train the next day. It was so different then. It was real. It was just I don't know, you almost felt like, looking back, like you were not a surfer at all, because I can't surf. But like, it was a lifestyle, as opposed to, we weren't an Olympic sport, you know, like Kona was a pipe dream, you know, I still wanted a Mercedes and you know, all of that. A pink bike, yeah, which I've never had yet. Yeah, so, and then from there, I met a guy called Robin Simpson, who was from Zimbabwe, and he was trying to be a professional triathlete, and he said, you know, come for the winter, the weather's good. So I said, yeah, sure, are you sure? And then he flew home, and then I sent him a fax, because that's what you did back then, and I didn't get a fax back initially, then I did, then I bought my paper ticket, and then I jumped on a plane in 1996 to Zimbabwe, and I landed, and there was no one there to pick me up, and I'm going, blimey heck, what have I done? And then, I don't know, about an hour after everyone had cleared out, his farm was a long, long way away.
Yeah.
He came and picked me up and started training in Zimbabwe. Then I came back to England because it was at altitude, you see, so I was already training at altitude. And then that summer, head of the game, that's it, yeah. And then, I came back that summer and I moved to outdoors because, again, it was altitude, and that's where all the Tour de France kind of guys went. And then I got to the crunch time when my parents were like, "Oh, are you going to go to university?" And I was like, "Well, probably quite enjoying this." And like my sister, she's very academic, and she went up. She went on to university, and there was a big push for me to go. And I said, "I tell you what," and I just got second at the European Juniors, and then second at the European Junior Duathlon. I said, "If I win World Championships, then I won't go to university." And they were like, yeah, that's fine, because in their logic, if you're only second in Europe, then you're probably not going to be world champion. And that was kind of like a breakthrough for me, because I had got my bike stolen the night before of the European champ, so I had to race on a borrowed bike, and the brakes were the wrong way around, but they didn't understand that, so I was like, yeah. And genuinely, to this day, I truly believe if I hadn't have won that world title in Lausanne in 1998, I would have gone to Exeter University to do marine biology, and then I had this vision of going to the Caribbean, studying starfish and coral life and ecosystems there. But
you just really didn't want to go to uni.
I just really didn't. But again, now you can do a 3-year degree over 5 or 6 years. Someone like Alex Yee, Georgia Taylor Brown, and Sophie Colbert. They've been back then. Like there was, I was half considering going to UCLA on a running scholarship. We had interviews. They said, don't bring your bike, you can't swim. It very much was, what is this triathlon? They really didn't understand it back then. And then I went back I found this nice place called Stellenbosch, and bought a house there. And it's a really, really amazing place if anyone's ever been there, or if anyone wants to go winter training. And then I
definitely recommend it, yeah.
So, it was like same age as I was 20, and I was living out in Africa to my mum and dad's. A quick
trajectory, for sure. So you're actually abroad quite a bit of the time now as well, then? That's what it's planned out this year.
Yes, it's got it's gone a bit out of hand now to where I'm probably not even going to be in the UK that much now. It's it is funny how things develop, like Tim says, and it's these little opportunities that kind of just spring up, and suddenly, like I'm like Tim, like I started 6 weeks this year, and then suddenly I'm back again for another 6 weeks, and then before you know it, we're renting houses out there, and it is pretty amazing how it kind of changes. But it is similar to me. Like I didn't want to go to uni. I have not gone to uni. As I like to tell my mum, I was taking more gap years.
The 1 year's turned into 3.
I think I'm at 20.
I'll be there soon. So. I was the same. Tim says, and it's perfectly valid. Like there's a brilliant setup universities-wise now. I could have easily gone there, no problem. And the thing is, you can go for
Loughborough or Leeds.
Actually, I know you're closer to Loughborough. I did enjoy Leeds more than I did Loughborough, but it's unreal to see those setups. As they're pretty unbelievable, and they offer a great amount of security and development for young athletes. And like you say, split the course by 4, 5, 6 years. You basically, can give yourself a bit of security while you're trying to make it as a triathlete. But for me, it wasn't really the path that I wanted to take. And
what course was it?
Probably something to do with. I probably would have ended up taking the generic route of sport and exercise science. But I also studied business and stuff, so I think potentially going down that route as well. The fact is, I finished in COVID in 2020. And obviously there was nothing going on in 2020, so just started training, and obviously the time by a year came around, and I was kind of going to decide to see what I wanted to do. I just really enjoyed being out of school, training basically. And it was actually at that point that I met my coach, Ryan Bolton. He's a US based coach for anyone who doesn't know. He basically invited me over there this year after I'd obviously worked for him for a year, and ended up basically traveling the States and you know, that's going to now become more and more of a base for me now. But yeah, no, it's been definitely an interesting development, but a fun one for sure.
Sounds good. So going back to that bit near the beginning again. So you went to the Olympics quite early on in your triathlon career. Was that in terms of like the selection process at that time? So that was
Politics.
I know the whole politics. We'll come on to probably those later on.
Now,
But getting selected for Sydney was obviously probably felt like quite a big deal at the time.
Oh, it was the first time triathlon was ever in the Olympics. It was in Australia, which back then was the spiritual home of, you know, triathlon, whether it was Ironman or ITU, World Triathlon. And it was quite funny because 2 years before, when I won the Junior Worlds, it was in Lausanne, which is where the IOC headquarters are. And that's when they announced, you know, that we are going to be in Olympic sports. Sydney's going to be the first one. Simon Lessing won the men's, and Andrew Johns was top 10, but he won the World Cup. So then it was one race to be world champion, and then the consistency like we have now, you were the World Cup champion. So we won both of those, and then there was a couple of other athletes, Richard Allen, Helen Jenkins' husband, Mark Jenkins, Craig Ball, Mike Ellicott. They're all these guys who were 4 or 5 years older than me, and they were like, oh, we're going to get that third spot. And I was like, yeah, they probably are, because I'm only, you know, I'm so young. But then, yeah, I started to do well in races, and it was Windsor Triathlon. You had to win the Windsor Triathlon, and I won it. And then you had to get top 6 at the European Champs, and I got 5th. And then literally, it was less than probably a year and a half from being World Junior Champion. I was on the same team as Simon Lessing and Andrew Johns. And the funny thing was, it was the highest ranked athlete got pre-selected, and then the other two were by these 2 races or discretion. And halfway through the selection criteria, it was pretty obvious. And Simon Lessing was 3-time world champion. He was like, I would say he was like Sebastian Coe, and Spencer Smith was like Ovett. Simon Lessing was very well educated, very, you know, he was the student of the sport. Well, Spencer Smith was a proper barrow boy. I don't know if anyone, like a proper geezer, like he got paid cash. His dad would come on with a sheepskin coat down to here, smoking a cigar. Where's my boy? Where's Spence? Oh, lovely fella. Really, he could not. He'd be on a moped chasing him in a race, going, you're cheating, you're driving. You're going crazy, crazy. Having him bath, for real. Crazy, crazy guy. So you had these kind of like, oh, I've lost my thought now. I've gone off. So Simon Lessing. So there was this guy. So, and then halfway through the selection criteria they realised Andrew Johns was racing so well and so consistent that he was now going to be like the number 1. So Simon Lessing had to do the Windsor Triathlon, and he didn't want to do that. So they changed the criteria mid qualification process, and it was the top 2 ranked athletes. So yeah, I did make the Olympics, and I always say this, and some people laugh, if you ever get a chance, you have to go to an Olympic Games. Obviously competing is one thing, but even to watch, and we're fortunate that we've had London, we have got Paris. I would really, really recommend. Competed in 3. I've been to Rio and Tokyo as well, and or Tokyo was the Paralympic Games. It is just something about having the best of the best, whatever sport, whether it's gymnastics, volleyball, was it beach volleyball, whatever the sport are, triathlon. It is just. I remember walking in the Olympic Village and there's Haile Gabriel Selassie eating a sausage and egg McMuffin the day before he wins a gold medal. You've got basketball players, you've got wrestlers, you've got gymnasts. It's just such a. The city just comes alive, and I think maybe hopefully Birmingham was similar for you. And it was my first one, and I finished 10th, and it was. It was still one of I can remember everything about that race and that experience, especially in a nightclub dancing. I say dance with Kylie Minogue, but there was lots of bodyguards around. Those are things that don't happen every day. My mum's going, who's Kylie Minogue?
I know, I do remember being in the village I think it was Athens that I went to the first one, and it was. It is basically like the freaks of the world, the genetic freaks of the world in a lot of ways, isn't it? Like you're talking about the...
Thanks.
Well, I mean, I suppose the physical freaks as well. Yeah, besides you two. It's kind of like, the basketball players and so on. I remember going for a run around the village and you get overtaken by the speed walkers and stuff like that.
He doesn't
I was just-
train that much.
I was just on a recovery jog. So obviously, Dan, the Olympics isn't. You got selected for Commonwealths this last
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
did you not?
Yeah, albeit a bit last minute, but
Yeah.
very dramatic.
Yeah. And I suppose Olympics is like 24, isn't it?
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose what have you got some aspirations to head in that direction?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as Tim says, it's a massive thing. I mean, God, I think I wanted to go as long as I could remember, really. Especially the fact that, like, unlike Tim, it has always been an Olympic sport as long as I've been alive. So, triathlon.
Still remember Avignon, 1989, the first ever World Triathlon Champs. And
Not to make them feel old, but I mean, I think it's hard not to want to go. But yeah, the journey to that starts. I mean, it's basically already started now. Qualification is open, so it's basically a free for all for the third spot on the men's at the minute. We don't really have a third man at the minute who's in contention. So there's basically a bunch of us, trying to get that third spot, which is exceptionally difficult to do. It's a little bit different to qualifying in Windsor nowadays. It's the process is arguably a little bit longer and very, very strict in terms of what you have to achieve. But yeah, for sure, it's something that I want to get to.
Unless they go down the domestic route again.
Yeah, nice to do that. Yeah.
So what was Jack? Was Davies? Was he working for Alex Yee in the bike at the weekend?
Yeah, I don't. This is where the political side comes out, and then you can't say as much. But
it's not being recorded live on Facebook. PTA.
They'll get me after.
Delete it.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a very different scenario. Like, not many people see this behind, like, what goes on behind the scenes. But like, at the weekend, Alex could have became a world champion. He was one spot. Hayden, that's how close it became at the end. Alex had he been one spot higher, he would have been world champion. Had Hayden been one spot higher, he would have been world champion. I mean, it was literally the margin of points and like places is unbelievable. But in that scenario, it then becomes when we had 5 British guys in the race. None of our other British guys are even close. You want to get your guy, a world championship, and so obviously in that respect, that's why it's basically used. Because as I've came to learn this year, especially like in elite sport, as I got told earlier this year, I mean, really, like, medals are the currency. It's an absolute reality. Like, as you go through, you realise that. And I mean, if you really want to, make your way through the system, then medals go an awful long way, and they do from in our system now a very, very young age. But yeah, I mean, I would hope that come 2024, I can kind of get myself into a position where I could, try to race for myself. But again, you've got to qualify that third spot before you can even have a say on that.
So
yeah.
Is there anything that you would advise Dan to do in the next 18 months besides
Get better?
race faster, stay injury free?
No, I think he's right.
Simple.
It's not a performance sport, it's a results sport, and there are absolutely no medals in training. You can have the highest VO2 max, the best 3K, 5K time, but it's all about what you turn up to the said races that are selected. And I think he's so fortunate that he's so young and he's had so much experience already. To go to the Commonwealth Games at the age of 20, that's just invaluable. And there's probably 4 British athletes, male athletes, that are still competing, that have been to Commonwealth Games, and you're one of them. And those kind of things are invaluable. And it's just making sure that you're willing to do what it takes, to get there, and don't be a domestic.
Talking about, I suppose, you've been to 3 Olympics, you've been 4 times a world champion. So yeah.
It's hard to say that.
Again, what out of all of those, have you got something that would stand out to you as what you would class as being at the top of the tree?
No, for me personally, No, I mean, in the moment, it's that race. It's your last race. You know, you're only as good as your last race, so it's those ones that you win. I think, winning. I think Lausanne is a special place for me. I won my junior world championships there in '98, my seniors there in 2006, and then I got second in the world sprint champs to Jonathan Brownlee. So I always said we just need to have the world champs there. So I trained a lot near there, about 40k away. My sister lives near there. So those are definitely special races. But when I look back, it's kind of more the preparation, the build-up, the process, and who I'm doing it with. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. That's going to happen when the gun goes. But when I definitely look back now, and I'm not saying this because maybe I'm past my sell date to win the big races, but those are the things that I remember. You know, I could not tell you how many podiums I've had in first one. All the coaches were not volunteers, but they weren't on payroll. They were paid for when they weren't at work. But it was definitely, we felt we were part of something. We really felt we were pioneers of the sport, taking this crazy little sport that had its first ever official world champs in 1989. Track and field and cycling in the early 1900s. Some sports even longer. And now we are a double medal event. We are a staple of the Olympic Games, and I think that's testament to me, basically. Getting 10th for Sydney Olympics. No, you're not supposed to laugh. You're supposed to go, It is. I mean, it's fantastic, and we're fortunate through Great Britain. As I said, Glenn Cook, he got 4th. He's one of the coaches now, even though he's a dinosaur.
Yeah, he's still in it. Yeah.
He was 4th at the first ever World Champs in Avignon. I think he's podiumed at Nice before when it was the classic race. Right through now to the likes of, and I'm sure Dan knows a load of 17, 18-year-olds who are, on your coattails. Yeah. We've really got this, and I'm not saying it's a production line, but we've really got it is a production line, but it's good that someone like Dan, he's not part of the system. He's a bit of a maverick. He's going to America, and what the heck? He's not at Leeds, he's not at Loughborough, he's not even in Bath or Stirling. He's, and I think it's brilliant that there's space for someone like him, because if there's, you've got to look after and nurture the talent, and I think some federations are right. This is the Brownlee way, and I think we did go through a phase of getting off on tangents here, but we did get this phase from Alistair, and I mean Alistair won his first world title in 2009, and we haven't had anyone really coming through since then. But now, as you said, there's a whole wave of you after that third spot. Alex is, and then yourself, the under 23 athletes, the guys. And I think they've learned that it's not like, wow, we've won a gold medal, let's repeat that with everyone. Letting Dan be a bit more, bit more freedom is fantastic, I think. That's how it was when I were allowed.
Not that they want everyone doing what I'm doing now, so no program anymore, but yeah.
I mean, have you got a favourite, even a favourite race venue or something where you've
yeah.
Well, it's not like where you had the best results, but it might be somewhere you just enjoy racing.
I mean, I don't know if you raced the other time in Kitzbühel.
Yeah, a couple of times.
I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have been there in Austria. Like, for a race venue, I mean, it is hard to beat Kitzbühel. Like, it is beautiful. Like just crystal clear lakes, mountains. Like, you're staying in like wooden chalets and all this. Like, I mean, I have really good memories there. Like, that was the first ever international race I did, and like, me and my dad flew into Munich and hired this like car and drove all the way through Germany and through the mountains and that, and man, it was mad. Like, so much fun. I love that. But interestingly, to be honest, it's like you say, like sometimes that, like, I think I came to realise it this year, but like the process of getting through to setting a goal and actually working towards it and achieving it. I don't think it matters whether it was like when I was a youth or whether I was going to Commonwealth Games. Like, that feeling of like, the best kind of example I have from being young is like, when I would be in Dev Squad is, I mean, every year we used to have British champs end of the summer. So I get off school and I thought, brilliant, like, basically do no schoolwork, just absolutely freaking hammer it for 6 weeks. And like, just that period and just some of the stuff we used to do was just insane. It's so stupid, the training we used to do, but like, like just setting a goal and going for it at the end, and kind of pulling it off at the end was just always such a such a big like satisfaction. I don't think that's really changed as I've got like into this year, you know. It's just like nowadays it's rather than it being, you know, Mallory in Leicestershire or not
the
constantly
Games in Paris.
no, there's such a bit of hatred for Leicestershire tonight, but yeah, no, it's just different places. But yeah, no, it's there's very few things beat that. Like very few things beat that.
So talking about favourite venues, do you want to tell me about your love affair with Beijing?
Oh no, never go back.
So there's a bit of a timeline, isn't it? There's kind of probably three incidents really, isn't there, in Beijing, sort of pretty much on consecutive years.
Yeah, I think I went to a test event in 2000, so the Beijing Olympics of 2008. I went there to a test event in 2007, ranked 3rd in the world, and I didn't have the best swim, and there was the group I was in, they weren't, anyway, there was a crash, I went down and I broke my elbow, so I've got my racing suit on, they take my bike, I go off in this ambulance, and Beijing it's not a big city, it's like, I don't know, it's like the biggest city in the US, it's huge, and we're right on the outside.
Yeah.
I had someone with me who had a phone, and they were speaking to the coaches, and then they got hold of the British consulate in Beijing, to which hospital, you know, should we take Tim to? And it came back that it was the Hong Kong University Hospital. So we're telling the driver, it's the Hong Kong University Hospital. And then we realised the hospital they wanted me to go to was actually in Hong Kong. So they were like, no, we can't do that. So they changed the thing. The ambulance took me to the airport. I turned up to the airport in my race suit. They gave me some tracksuit bottoms. I got on a plane that night, and in the end they said, no, we're flying you back to London. So that was my first experience of hopefully I was going to get pre-selected the year out. But anyway, got over that, made the teams, that was all hunky-dory. The last race before the Beijing Olympics was in Tongyong, which is still a race, still a world. Then it was a World Cup, which was the top tier. And it was about 6 weeks before. Turned up, had a great race. I won the race by about 20 seconds. Bevan Doherty and Jan Frodeno had a sprint finish 20 seconds behind me for 2nd and 3rd. So I was in great shape. Javi wasn't racing that well. He thought there was a rumour about his ankle, and it was true, unfortunately. He had the most unlucky Olympic run ever. So we went to Tongyong, and basically the night we went to Korea to train on this island called Jeju. So it's honestly, it's a bit like the Ibiza of South Korea. And everyone was there, the Americans, the Swiss, the Canadians, the French, we were.
Yeah.
But it's really weird in Korea, South Korea, when you get married, if you go on honeymoon, you wear the same clothes as your wife or husband. So literally, if I walked out the door like this, my wife would have the same shoes, the same socks, but they've got like pink towel and tracksuits on. Pink, and everyone's in these couples, and it was really... So you're riding on going, oh, honeymoon. Really bizarre, really. But great place, lovely island. Anyway, the last night...
What about the food?
Well, yeah, the last night I didn't feel so good, and we were flying in 3 days before the race, and I ended up throwing up crazy and all sorts of things, and I lost nearly like 4.5–5 kilograms in 24 hours. We had like, by the time I'd stopped throwing up, we had like less than 48 hours to the race, and in the end they decided that I was well enough to start, and I got lapped on the bike. And I'm sure a lot of you know what happened to me in 2017, but to this day that was probably the hardest comeback I would say I've ever had to do. The next year, because talking about the process, that was a 4-year process, and what made it worse is obviously Jan Frodeno won, and Bevan Doherty, he got the bronze, and Simon Whitfield, and I beat these guys, you know, relatively convincingly. Not that, you know, you could have, should have, would have, but you didn't, did you?
Yeah.
But that was really hard. And then I went back the next year because it was the World Champs, and I thought I'm going to fly in super late. So I flew in literally like 6 days before, did a like
Yeah, we were there when you landed.
Yeah, and literally I flew BA business class, and from getting off the plane to going through passport control, I've thrown up 3 times. It's just something I've eaten on the bloody... To the point where you're queuing up all these lines to get in, and literally those big fake power plots. So I'm literally, no one's looking. And I'm like, are they going to let me in the country? Are they going to let me in the country? And I got in, and I'd already messaged John, and I can't remember the doctor, and I got isolated, and I didn't even race. So yeah, not going back to Beijing.
Sounds like someone was out to get you.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, but you wouldn't have it any other way, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
Rich tapestry of throwing up in
in Asia.
China.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was. Yeah, that was a. You couldn't have written that scripted only, could you? From
And Holly Abel,
consecutive races.
who was
yeah.
she was coached by the same coach as me, Ben Bright, actually, who's one of the high performance coaches. She got ill as well, and so did our coach. So it was obviously, but the federation took a chef out, so it came down to some chicken that, well, I was going to say he cooked, but he obviously didn't cook. That really gave us terrible, food poisoning.
Yeah, it was a difficult one. I mean, at this point in time, you haven't really had anything amazingly bad. Lucky enough, you haven't been.
Yeah, not like Tim. He's had all sorts, but yeah, mine's been slightly more. Definitely slightly more consistent and not as many issues. I mean, interestingly, like the only time I've like attempted going for like an Olympic-esque event at the minute is the Youth Olympics, which, like, for people who don't know, is, I mean, it literally tracks the Olympics. It's every 4 years. And yeah, like, similar to Tim, like, I mean, I knew about that, like, 4 years in advance. It's going to be in, in Argentina. And that was in 2018. And I mean, I had no idea I could get there. Like, you know, I was so young when I started trying to get there. And like, I did that 4-year build-up, and to be honest, that was probably, within that first kind of 8 years of doing the sport, that was probably the most disappointing I've been, because like, I was doing very, very well. Like, I got to a point where, you know, I'd been British champion a few times, like, and obviously booked it's quite a tough process getting through even the Youth Olympics. And I remember, like, you know, I got my ticket to the qualifier, which was in Banyoles. They still hold events there today, and yeah, like, I went there, like, I mean, I was ranked exceptionally high in Europe. Like I say, I'd just done my first international race, you know, very, very young, but like, yeah, like, pretty much in my head, I definitely thought I could go, like, versus the other Brits that were there. And yeah, just somehow, I don't know if this is a record, but I somehow managed to crash 3 times in the same race. I just remember, like, I had the worst swim of my career, the worst. And then I got out, I made it around. It was a 2-lap course. It's 10-kilometer laps. So, you know, like, probably the least technical thing you could do versus something like Super League nowadays. And yeah, we came into a corner, like, literally a pack of like 50 of us. Went down with like 20 guys, got back on, and then, you know, managed to get around another lap, and then again came off again. And then back then I was riding tubulars, and the tubular had popped. I remember, like, going into the curb when I crashed the second time, and I didn't realise, and the guys were like trying to pull me off. All the British coaches were like, "Oh, just stop, like, you know, you got the European qualifier in a few weeks." And I was like, no, like, I'll get the bike. And I got back on it. It must have been so pathetic. Luckily it wasn't videoed, but I literally, like, clipped back in, and obviously I'm riding like a carbon rim on bloody, it was like being on ice, and I literally got on the bike, I must have clipped in, and I just went straight down, like, face planted, and I was just like, and I ran like over a kilometre in the transition barefoot, you know, and I had the British coaches screaming at me the whole way around, like, "Stop, like, you're being stupid, all this," and my dad was there running, he was like, "Come on, come on." He's got more, I just remember, there's actually a photo of, like, the guy, I actually just raced with him last weekend, but the guy who won that qualifier and then subsequently went and won the Youth Olympic Games in the end. Yeah, there's a photo, I'll have to find it, but there's literally me, I've got, like, the entire of my bum is, like, hanging out my tri-suit. Like, the guy, like, I'm, like, parallel, the other guy, he's, like, coming to the finish line. I've still got, like, 2 laps to go, and then my dad's there, like, you know, on the side, cheering me on, and I just, like, yeah, I look so pathetic, but that's, yeah, I mean, that's probably about as worse as it's got for me at the minute. Like, it was just a bit of a bad day, but yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, to be honest, like, I'm very, very fortunate I've not had anything, you know, in the, you know, fingers crossed in the way that you have at the minute, but yeah, I think ultimately as you learn, like, now the seasons are so heavy. I don't know what they were like when you were doing, but, like, I've literally just finished.
No, they were seasons.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Started in May, finished in September.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that was what it was like for us. And I mean, I've just finished last weekend in Abu Dhabi, and I started my race season in, I think, the 2nd of March. So, I mean, the sheer volume of races, and ultimately what happens is, like, you're racing 20, 25, 30 times. I mean, even Super League, it's so much. Like, I mean, you ultimately, you can't always be at your best for all of them. And obviously I've learned coming up this way, I've managed to reach a pretty good level this year of racing and start racing with the best guys in the sport pretty quick. But that's ultimately been, you have an off day at this level, and God, you just get absolutely screwed, and that's the thing, you've got to learn to roll with it a lot more. As a junior, it was you do 10 races, and like you say, start in May, finish in September, and then a bit of cross country. I mean, it's changed so much, but I think learning to kind of roll with the punches a bit more is quite important. But eventually you can get it right, because you look at Hayden Wild, you look at Georgia Taylor Brown, Flora Duffy, you look at these people, they are consistently on top. So it is possible to be consistent at the best level in the world, no matter what the distance is. I mean, Christian Gustav are just taking the piss with
any distance.
Yeah, doesn't matter. But the rumour is they want to win Super League and the Olympics and Kona in the next couple of years.
So, Super League, right?
Yeah, no, if they're in the Eagles, then they sound good. Otherwise, we'll sabotage them. But no, it's definitely becoming an interesting sport the way it is, up and down, and regardless of what distance you're racing, who you are, elite age groupers, whatever, it's learning to go roll with the punches, basically,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it can take in different career paths, which is what I was going to talk to you about next. I wanted to get on to sort of how you evolved into a bit of a long course triathlete. Obviously,
TV broadcasting.
Oh yeah, it was on the weekend, wasn't it? And then, it was very good. So obviously after Beijing, it was kind of obviously a bit of a period between Beijing and London where it was kind of a bit of a stressful period for various reasons. You were training quite a bit and coaching, self-coached for a while.
Daughter was born.
Daughter was born. Was she born in Milton
Bedford.
Oh, that's right. Anyway, and then so you ended up making the move over to the States.
Yeah, well, when I was younger, I wanted to kind of be world champion, and then you wanted to win Kona. There was no Olympics, and that came in, and I realised, I was thinking 2010 I had a good year. I won quite a lot of races, so I was still, still looking good. And I think 2012, after the first 4 races, I was ranked top 10 in the world. But it was very apparent that we had to win a medal as a country. We were always winning world championships. We were always winning European championships. We were winning the World Cup Series. Yet, Simon Lessin didn't win in London. In Athens, AJ didn't win. I didn't win in Beijing. And obviously this young whippersnapper of a kid, Alistair Brownlee, or Brown Teeth as we used to call him. he clings them now. He was and he is something special. There's no two ways about it. He is, he's just an exceptional athlete. But they couldn't afford for him not to win, especially in London. So they decided to take Stuart Hayes as a domestique. I've known Stuart since I was 7. We went to rival primary schools. We swam together growing up. We went to the same triathlon club. So again, there was a small concentration in West London. Yeah. And when they decided that, I was like, it's not for me. I'm old school. I think you should race for yourself. The best couldn't have domestiques. Flora's never going to have a domestique, is she? It's different in pro cycling because everyone has 7 people, 10 people, whatever the team is, depending on the race. I've been to Boulder in 2002 with one of my coaches on an altitude camp, and I said, look, we're going to go long. If I want to carry on racing, we've got to go long. I was talking to Kelly, persuading her. But I've got to move to Germany because it's big over there, or we've got to move to America. And let's be honest, if anyone in the UK asks me, what do you do? On the train, and I say I'm a professional triathlete. They go, have you been to the Olympics? Well, when you're in America, first of all, they ask you, what's in that bag? Are you in a band? And I know it's a bicycle. It's got a bike in it. It must be me, I guess. No, but they always ask you, I'm a professional. Have you been to Kona? They don't have a clue that it's in the Olympics. It's bizarre. They really. Bevan Doherty, double Olympic medalist. I remember he won 3 or 4 70.3s and living in Santa Cruz. And on the front cover of, I think it's Lava magazine, the big triathlon magazine, up and coming athlete. I'm going, oh my God. 1 world title, 2 Olympic medals. So we went to Boulder with John in October,
Yeah.
and I was like, 300 days of sunshine in Boulder. The first week we go, no sunshine, lots of snow, but anyway, we managed to persuade her. And then it was April the 4th, I got my visa approved, so I could work there, and we moved there. And then the April is again 300 days of sun, a record for Colorado. Boulder, 44 inches of snow in 1 month. Oh my God, the stress. But I loved it. We lived in Boulder till 2018. And it is just a great, there are eventually lots of sunshine. Again, altitude really agrees with me. I found a great coach called Julie Divens, she's got third at Kona, but she also went to Athens Olympics with me as an athlete. So she'd really done that transition from short course to long course. So she understood how we trained, as opposed to, Dave Scott is a good friend of mine. He's like, you need to do miles, Tim. I'm like, no, Dave, I can't. I need to do quality. So she understood it, and it took a while because I went from racing very much how Dan does now, Super League on TV. We're watching Abu Dhabi with amazing coverage on BBC, even better commentary. It's a big sport. We are the centres of it. And I remember one of my first 70.3s I went to was this big American race called Oceanside. And I was like, oh, we're racing at what time? We've got to rack our bikes the night before? There's no press conference? What? And it was really weird that it really was. You've gone from this kind of like Premier League to Hackney Marsh, you've gone from the big, and it was kind of like, after a while, I just loved it. You're mingling a lot more with age groupers because there's 2,000 people racing, no one knows who you are, so you can really, get involved and whatnot. And it was really enjoyable, and there were new races, you'll find out in years to come. I've been to Madrid maybe 12 times, all 12 times I've stayed in the same hotel. I've always eaten at the same restaurant, had the same coffee, because it's your job. And as soon as I finish Madrid, WTS, you get the airport and you get out of there. Tokyo, it is glamorous, but my God, it's not. So for me, I was trying all these new races, and I raced a lot in South America. John came to visit a lot because he enjoyed it out there. And yes, my son was born out there, so he's dual nationality. So we're still deciding, see who wins out of England and USA. It's an amazing. Again, it's similar. It's that adventure. The friends I've got there. Some of our friends, an American family, they came and visited us in the summer in England. He's an age group triathlete, and but we just hit it off. It's those lifelong friends. My old manager from there, I was speaking to Franco the other day. He was one of the founders of Retool, and he also managed Craig Alexander, Julie, and a load of other athletes. It really is a mecca of triathlon. Much better than Tucson, the dirty tea as we call it.
I can certainly agree with you on the triathlon. Everyone's convinced that I'm an Ironman triathlete.
Well, you do train with Sam bloody long, don't you?
I had a guy convinced that he'd seen me in Kona, and I was like, nah. He showed me a photo, and I was like, mate, that's definitely not me. I've never
So I suppose you've got one eye on maybe doing something like that one of these days? In Nice or Kona?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, 8 o'clock they've announced it now, I reckon. That's the rumour, 8 o'clock.
I mean, it's going to come back to what I said at the start, first time I ever heard about triathlon was from my dad, and the first thing I ever heard about was Kona. That was, I didn't know about the Olympics at that point, not for triathlon anyway, So I actually have, always had the ambition to do that.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. Funnily enough, how times change. The first time I ever met Tim, coincidentally, I was racing him when I was 18, and we raced a half Ironman together, and that's the only time I've ever attended one in Outdoor X in 2020. So I have briefly gone long, but that was a tough experience. I remember trying to do you remember we had to go stagger start with
7
COVID.
seconds apart, sprint distance swim.
Yeah, because it's freezing, so I caught you up on the swim straight away, and then...
I was playing the long game, so how did the race finish?
And then on the bike, I just remember, the photos now, God, everything gets captured, but I'm hanging on the back of you, and who else was there? Adam Bowden.
Goodwin.
Yeah, Goodwin, Tom Davey, all these people, and I'm thinking, this is awesome, so easy. And I got 30 minutes into the ride, and I was yeah, it was all downhill really from there. Just like, yeah, it just went back and back and back. And I remember being on my last lap of the run, and again, similar sort of feeling to that Youth Olympics thing, but except the lap was about 6 miles this time, and yeah, Tim was already coming in, and I was like, oh no, it's just such a long way, such a long way. But yeah, no, it's yeah.
So you are going to do Kona doing one day?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Well, the thing is though, yeah, like you say, I mean, with the rumour that came out today, whether or not I get a chance at Kona now is, we shall see. Yeah, maybe Nice for me. But yeah, no, definitely want to go along. And I mean, now with PTO, you know, I mean, it really offers good Olympic distance triathletes the opportunity because the distances are not too bad. So I mean, the absolute plan for me is to get through 24 and then start doing PTO events from 2024, by which point I'll be like 22, so I'll be a bit more. A bit more of a chance. Unbelievable. You might be still going, Tim, eh?
No, my wife will shoot me.
So when you went to the States and then you stuck to 70.3, so you stuck to your guns with Dave Scott and so on for a while. Because it was Mallorca, wasn't it? It was a couple of years later, wasn't it? Before
no, it was 2014.
Yeah.
Because I got third in the world 70.3s.
Yes.
Jan won. No, Javi won. Jan was second, and I was third.
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks later, my coach suggested, "Oh, why don't you do an Ironman? There's one in Europe, and if you win it, you can qualify for Kona the next year. And if you don't win it, you just say it was your first one." So I said, "Okay." So I went to Mallorca, pretty underprepared. And I just remember back then, the Mallorca Ironman course, it was a 183k bike. Because when I got to 180k, I'm like, where the transition? I want to get this helmet off. They said it was only 180k bike. And yeah, I took the time in transition, put my compression socks on, did my shoelaces up, and yeah, I was fortunate enough. In fact, you raced there, John, didn't you?
I raced part of it.
No, you did. I remember you sat. Yeah. And I remember, because you bought Ailey, didn't you?
Yes.
And it was his girlfriend at the time, who's now his wife.
Do you have to tell the story?
I do. Because this is beautiful. This is Ironman. So I had a good race, and I was able to win, so I qualified. And John sat on the side of the road. I'm not going to continue. I don't want to do it. And he did because of one person. So good. Yeah. There you go. That's what you remember. See, I remember that more than I do remember winning. But yeah, it was good. And then I had a whole year to kind of like prepare for Kona. Yeah, I did Kona in 2015. And 16? And 16, yeah. 15 was good. I've got some stomach issues on the bike. No, towards the end of the bike and then the run, and I finished, I think, 16th.
Yeah.
And then 16 wasn't so good. And I ended up cramping on the bike, absolutely crazy, and I couldn't finish because no matter what I did, even to the point of getting off the bike, I was just cramping. And then I realised, you know, I've nailed 70.3. I podiumed at the World Champs a few times, and I was winning 90% of my races. The rest I was finishing second and third. And that's when I thought we need to work on my biking. And as a friend of mine from when I was a younger guy called Craig Ball, who just missed out on Sydney Olympics as a reserve, he'd just got back into time trialling, left the sport, and he said, "Tim, you need to speak to this guy called Matt Bottrell." I was like, "What, a time trialist? You're having a laugh?" No. Anyway, I did, and like 3 hours later from America on a Zoom call, or it was Skype back then, we just hit it off, and then we changed the whole philosophy around my training, and 2017, I had a pretty good year.
Up to a point.
Yeah, I mean, up to a point. I mean, I started the year well. I won the first 4 races I did. And I went to St. George, and it was the North American Champs, and that was one of Alistair's first ever races. And at the press conference, he said, "Yeah, I'm going to swim and then just kind of like do my own thing on the bike." And I could see Sebi and that up. And that's exactly what he did, and we didn't see him for the rest of the day. And he won by a country mile, and I remember Lionel was second, then it was Sebi, then it was myself. But I was so happy because it was 3 weeks before my big race, which I was racing for a Brazilian team by then called Team Bravo, absolutely mad, crazy into triathlon in Brazil. I wanted to do the Brazil Ironman because I got second the year before, and it was a fast course, but I just wanted to put together a good Ironman, and so 3 weeks later I went down to Brazil. Bit of a nightmare getting there. My flight got cancelled, then the plane broke down, then I had to, got there I think 3 days later than planned. It was a nightmare. But yeah, I had a great swim, came out of the leaders, I was stuck to my numbers, and my coach Matt, at the time, very scientific, and he wrote down what my bike time was going to be and didn't tell me, and he was 90 seconds out, and I biked a 4:06, and had an 18-minute lead, and I felt good, and I carried on running, and one of the coaches, Crow's coach actually, a guy called Frank Jacobson, who's based in New York, he was like, Tim, if you run a 2:48, you're going to break the record. And I was like, brilliant, what record? And the run record, and he's like, the world record, and I was like, oh my god, all of a sudden, it wasn't a Wahoo then, which are amazing, it was a Polar. I was like, it's not working, am I really running this quick? And god, it's the most stressful, last 27k that I'd run, and I thought I'm going to enjoy the finish, because people are going, yeah, you're close, and in an Ironman, what is close? These days it's literally 10 seconds, 20 seconds, but even a couple of minutes is pretty close over 8 hours. So I wasn't quite exactly sure, because I didn't trust my watch, and I thought, well, I'm going to turn into the finish suit, and the crowd will be going wild, and I'm going to see that, and I'm going to know if I've done it or not. So I turn in the finish shoot, and I'm like, are you joking? The time is facing the photographers. So I'm like, what? Got it. So I sprint down, and if you ever have a spare moment, watch it. I literally crossed the line, and I'm like, because I've beaten it by 4 bloody minutes. Later on that year, our training had carried on going well, and I got 3rd in the world 70.3s again, bloody Javier in that Ben canoe. But my claim to fame in Chattanooga is Javi was sponsored. Well, who's he sponsored by? I think ASICS, but it didn't really matter. Ben canoe was sponsored by Hoka. Javi never drinks, and I'm friends with Daniel Ricciardo, and he was doing the shoeies, and I did a shoey on the podium with my race shoe, and I got Javi. And I've got more messages that, you got Javi to drink alcohol out of your sweaty shoe. It was brilliant. And then Ben got into trouble because the pictures are like this with an on shoe, and he was with Hoka. And it was so fun. But I was happy. Things were going well. And I went to Kona in good shape with one of my good friends. And unfortunately, 3 days before the race, I was in a cycle lane. There was a petrol on the right-hand side of the road, and a car turned in front of me. I remember skidding, going, I've just put my new tyres on. Next thing I know, I woke up half an hour later, and the rest is history. The good thing, though, is that junction doesn't exist anymore. There's a nice central reservation, so they can't
turn across the road.
I was a year too late for that, and again, similarly, that could have been the year, what if, but alas. And then, never been the same again. I can't really turn that way very well.
Good physio.
I did, John flew out to Boulder two times, 3 times to help me with my rehab.
Yeah.
And
I think the first time I came on, you hadn't really been out of your sitting upright in your chair overnight. And
I wouldn't recommend a Halo. Definitely go for the Fusion if anyone is in that position. Especially when the screws come loose, they tighten them. And literally, it's a bolt with a titanium bolt with a point on the end that just goes into your skull. And mine kept on coming loose, and I could feel them. So I'd go in, and literally, the first time when they put it on, they gave me a local. But whenever they're tightening it, they didn't. And by then, it had come about on, we're going to film it. So my wife is there with the phone, and I'm just going grayer and grayer as I can hear the torque wrench click. And I remember once asking the guy, it's like, well, what is the torque? And you guys know bikes, so guess what the torque is in Newton meters to tighten the 4 screws into your skull. Anyone? 15. So a bike, if you tighten your seat post, it's what, 6.2? Any tighter, you're going to crack carbon. It's 8. And I'm like, how the heck? No, I don't want to know how they've tried that. but it got so. But literally, and every time they tighten it, goes deeper and deeper into your skull. And every 3 weeks, I'd have a CAT scan just to make sure everything's good. And then just before Christmas, I had to have an extra CAT scan. And I'm going, oh God, that's not good. It's still hurting. I'm still on my codeine and loving it. But it's I don't think it's that bad. And apparently, the front one here, if they tightened it any more, it was going to go through the skull. So, but I was like, oh, beauty, what a Christmas present. The kids had just hung lights around it. It's coming up. Well, no, it's got to stay on for at least 3 months, so we're going to drill another hole 1 centimetre. Oh. So I actually had 5 screws in my head. But it's weird when they take it off, because you just lose, from here onwards, can you imagine sitting the middle row in an economy class for 3 months? You cannot move from up here. And the great description, well, not really, it's like a bowling ball being supported by spaghetti. And it was amazing, like, I could really, you know, the muscle here, the wastage, it was, oh. And that, at that moment, I realised the enormity of my task, just to, in my mind, right then, to function, you know. So, yeah, thank you, John. Yeah.
You're welcome.
That documentary was like blooming intense, like, wasn't it? It was...
The first edit, they had to change because it was too dark. Because there were scenes like when I had the halo off, I'd get physio and they literally get you in a headlock and go like that, and I passed out because I'm just going, no, keep doing it, don't worry about me. And I'm like, and they're like, Tim. It wasn't John, no, that was Red Hammer Physio. in Longmont. Yeah. She was a bit crazy. Yeah. But yeah, no, yeah, like, I mean, I didn't shower for like over 3 months. I could lay on the bed and my wife would loosen it and she'd get baby ones, wet wipes, and kind of, she could just do this because it's this sheepskin thing. And because it's an open wound, you know, you've got all this pus coming out, so 3 times a day you've got to clean it with surgical spirits. And yeah, it really is not good at all.
No.
So yeah, have the fusion. Or don't get hit by a car. Have a hangman scratcher. Yeah.
But you were told that if you were going to get range of movement back, that you kind of to go with the halo was going to give you a better option from that.
That's it. Dr. V, no bedside manner, the doctor. And I'd actually met him, unfortunately my daughter was very ill in 2014, she had to have brain surgery, and it was the same surgeon, because he's one of the only 4 surgeons in America that can do the neural, spine and the head. So I already knew, and I was like, oh bloody hell, not this guy. And he said, you've got 3 choices, but you've only got one. You can go for what's called an Aspen collar, so it's just the collar on. You can go for the fusion, so it's very simple. They put 2 titanium rods. He said the problem with that is it fuses to, and you look at me talking physio. Your body's, everything moves individually, but it locks them together. And within 10 years, you need to do then 4, 5 and 6, or is it just 4 and 5? But to do that, they go like that, they move everything out, and they put this big mesh. And then not only are you limited this way, and I was like, no. And he said, oh, the halo is going to keep it the stillest. And I was like, yeah, sure, what's a halo? And I genuinely had no idea. And they said, well, come back in a couple of hours. I said, okay, well, can I see my wife? Because I was in camp in Tucson, seriously, Tucson, Steamboat Springs, and in Kona to prepare for the race. I hadn't seen her probably for about 6 or 7 weeks. So I went back, had a coffee. I said, oh yeah, I'm going to get a halo. One of my friends had flown back from Kona with me. And then I came back and then I was like, holy shit, they're going to screw. Yeah, so not
reality kicked in.
Yeah, reality bites, right?
Yeah, indeed. So I was going to talk to you both as well about how your training, I suppose, evolved. I mean, when you went to race 1 course, and obviously Dan now with what he's doing, racing shorter distances at the moment, but you kind of, I suppose, evolved as you went into long distances, because I know pretty well that you didn't do much in a gym. Through what? Yeah, through proportions of your career, because you swam, bike and ran, and then certainly when you were in Loughborough and so on, there wasn't really much gym time.
But no one did it.
No
one did it. No one, like, yeah, you were, I mean, I was lucky that one of my young coaches, he was like, I was at Thames Turbo and he was at Borough Road, doing a sports science degree, and he got this SRM power meter, and I was part of the study. So in the 90s, I had an SRM power meter. But apart from that, like, it was, you got to swim, you got to bike, you got to do brick sessions, you got to train harder. And now, when I look at now it's all lactate testing as you're training, it's core temperature here, it's, what's that thing that Jan has got a fake one on? I mean, he's got a real one on the super, so I hope no one's paid for that. It's your glucose monitor, it's, training peaks. God, every couple of months they're adding this, it's your HRV now with your Whoop and your Aurora, and it's like, and again, with that is, if we were doing gym, it was like, deadlift, bench press, press ups, chin ups, and now it's, yeah, I think the understanding of the demands of the sport is so specific.
Yeah.
And I think we see that, because I would touch word, hopefully for Dan, people aren't getting as injured, hopefully, as well, maybe the British women, they tend to get injured quite a lot, don't they? Yeah, there has been massive involvement, which I'm sure.
Yeah.
You're not get away nowadays in a union without touching on the gym, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's like compulsory if you're in the program, so yeah.
So obviously you've mentioned about having a lot of races this year.
Yeah.
I suppose it kind of has an impact on any other training you do, because obviously Larry from our lead S&C coach here has kind of been working with you sort of since the last year. But it's a bit of a juggling act when it comes to what you can do gym-wise and around recovering and everything else.
It's it's challenging. I mean, me and Tim went on the Super League series. Obviously, that was by far the most challenging. I mean, for what goes on behind the scenes, behind what you guys see, I mean, it is a hell of an operation, like unbelievable. But logistically as an athlete, it's very, very difficult to get in like, the right recovery, strength and conditioning. You know, like I mean, Tel had me on a very so many different plans to suit different gyms and all sorts. But yeah, we would move around. I mean, we literally raced, didn't we? Race. Next day we're on a plane to Munich. Stay there for a week. Next day we're going to Malawi. Race. It was just so full on.
And that's the racing.
Yeah, Tim was but yeah, no, it definitely creates a challenge. But I think ultimately we prepared as best as we could for the information we got given. And I think that basically allowed me to get through. I mean, I've only just returned home from that trip, starting back in September, so 3.5 months away, and coming back, I was in here the other day doing an assessment and seeing physios and everything, and generally the body's held up pretty well, but I think ultimately it's finding the time to prioritize the recovery, the strength and conditioning, and nowadays I do really prioritize that. I mean, I distinctly remember being in here as I don't know how young we were when we were coming here.
You were 11.
11, yeah, and Teleri was also there, and I remember there was a line of us doing press-ups and circuits and all sorts in here, and I remember going home and we got the booklet, and I was like, oh, that's useless, I'll just do swim and bike, it doesn't matter, and as I got older, and it would always be like that, and then actually as I got older, and then I trained more, and then you get more problems. Suddenly I realised oh crap, actually probably should listen now, So I think again it's different athletes are respond differently to different stimuluses. I mean, it's well known that I don't know how, I think you would agree, Tim, the Norwegians do not do any strength and conditioning, stretching, massage, etc. I mean, I just spoke to Christian at the weekend, and we were lying down at the pool after the race, and he was I was like, oh, do you not do any of it? And he's like, oh, he's like, I'd rather just lie in bed for an extra hour, and I was like, oh, alright.
Cut that bit out.
Yeah, and the other,
the Olympic champion.
The other philosophy was he was eat more and then train more, and I was like, all right, okay. I was like, so that's what you're gonna do, is eat more and train more. But it's a balance, and I mean, to be honest, what you don't see is the history of those guys. They've not always been healthy and fit like they are, and not many of them make it through that program. I think ultimately, if you're looking for a sustainable career, then you've got to do it. If you're looking for a short career, then you ultimately, you probably can get away with it for a bit.
Yeah.
I think sustainability, and also it's long term, the amount of damage you do to your body, I really don't believe what we do is particularly healthy. If you look at the long term, you think I've done this for 10 years already, I might go another 20. I mean, that's 30 years of just hammering your body.
Thanks.
And I think long term it doesn't do any good for you. So I think anything you can do in between to make that, ultimately that transition to later life a little bit more comfortable is worth it. But I mean, ultimately, if you achieve brilliant things in your career, it's worth maybe taking a few years off at the end. But it's definitely something to look at nowadays, and there's a lot of specialty in it, like Teleri and obviously momentum. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things we're trying to sort of look at, is try to tailor some programs to every sport's different, and I think you've got obviously different demands for endurance versus more shorter, explosive type sports. One of the things that we're going to try to put out to the people here again is upcoming is doing some endurance-based classes and group training together, where we focus on the demands of things like, well, any endurance sport really, but the long course triathlon type stuff, or triathlon in general. Even if you're racing sprint distance, that's effectively, it's an endurance event.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just if you're going to do crazy things like Ironmans or race as many times as Mr. Keith Murray does over there when he's away racing in foreign climes every weekend, then it's you know, it takes a big toll on your body, and sort of looking after yourself, both from an injury prevention point of view and from a performance perspective as well, sort of integrating some specific training tools into it. I mean, Tim, when you were in the gym in Boulder, you would almost do sessions alongside going in the gym and working on various movement patterns, and that was something new in terms of stuff that you hadn't really done before, but it's kind of kept you, in the most part, fairly injury-free.
Absolutely. I think yeah, when I was a pro at first, it's like, yeah, swim, bike, run more, that's brilliant, but it's the secret to being a pro is the sleeping, is the eating, and it is the S&C, without a doubt, because your body can only take so much, but the stronger your body is, the more it can take. So therefore, the more you can swim and bike and run, but you definitely need that. And when we're younger, yeah, you know, we're developing so quickly that you don't need to do as much. But if you are doing it, it will definitely. I wish now I knew now what I did. I wish I knew now when I was younger, whatever the saying is. You know, I wish I knew then what I know now. But yeah, and again, the development and the understanding from the S&C coaches and the physios has massively changed as well. It's not about getting big and strong and bulking up. You know, we used to finish our 3-hour bike rides and go straight in the gym. So then Erin, who I was working with, and Amy, they could see how I was moving when I was fatigued. And yeah, if you're fresh, you can do a nice clean and jerk. But when you've just done a 3-hour bike ride with some efforts at race pace, you know, that's how you're going to be when you run. So it's the specificness of that, which is, yeah, those are the margins that, you know, someone like, you know, the Norwegians and Dan and, you know, Alex Yee and Hayden Wild in Georgia, they're working out. I mean, Flora, I know Flora very well. She used to live with her husband, I've known since he was a kid, because they spend half the year in Stellenbosch. And she is in the gym like 18 times. No, she's in the gym so much. Like every day she's doing something in the gym. She's either foam rolling or she's doing this or that. I know Ernie Guru, her run coach, again, the run drills she does, and you can see, I don't know if anyone watched the race, she's even the last K and the first K, she looked very much the same. When you saw someone like Hayden Wild, you know, he comes flying out, and, you know, I'm picking on him, but because he had a bad race, but he didn't look the same athlete. Well, you know, and it is the small things that do make a massive. They're boring sometimes, and on a dark evening, the last thing you want to do is go to the gym, you know, but come race season, yeah. Winter miles somewhere. Summer smiles.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Well, that's covers quite a lot of stuff. What might be a good idea now is, hopefully you guys have got some questions that you've thought of and come in the back of your brains that haven't maybe been answered to this point. So if you want to ask anything to these two, feel free.
What is your mindset? What drives you, either of you?
What is your mindset?
I bet that's my brother, so give him all the tips. Yeah, anyway.
I think it's when you think of more, and it changes. You know, when I was younger, I wanted that convertible Mercedes and a pink bike, you know. If you Google it, it was on the front cover like this with a white suit on. Honestly, like what's the guy's from Miami? Yeah, literally. He, you know, that was the mindset. And then it was, okay, I want to be consistent. And now it's like, God, it's pretty easy to win. It's pretty easy. Now, God, it's easy to get there. It's how do I stay there? So then the mindset would change. Is like, now I've been the hunter. Now I'm the hunted. I've got these young people coming up. You know, the likes of Alistair, Jonathan, Will Clark, you know, Javier Gomez. You know, and then it's kind of like, how do I stay there? So it definitely evolved. And definitely long course though, and this is maybe more for you guys, is that it turned internally, and not selfish in a way I would say, but it's more like I'm in control from the start to the finish. If Dan's attacking on the bike, I've got to bloody close it down because he's a good runner. But when you go long course, if Lionel's going past like this, 100 miles an hour, you know, pushing 422 watts, I'm stupid if I go with him. So for me, it was the process, and I really, really enjoyed that. And definitely in the last few years, it's just survival. Just keep the body together and let me turn up. So definitely, it will evolve. I'm sure now you just want to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
You know, you wanted to bloody win that race last weekend, and you believe you know that's the driving thing, and it's that development. I can imagine.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think the biggest thing I've had to, I mean, I've literally just finished the season, but biggest thing I've had to learn is like, you know, I've done it like 10 years. I was very, very successful as a youth and junior, you know, like won many titles and got to a position where last year I was one of the best juniors in the world. And yeah, I think like that created such an interesting mindset, because after 10 years of, you know, very often being on the podium, winning, etc., you know, you almost have an expectation that you'll win everything, you know. And I think actually, like, I very much carried that into this year. I had no idea what I was getting myself into this year because I'd never raced at senior level. But like, suddenly, like, you realise it's like, you know, when I started back there in Dalton, like, you know, I mean, there was about 3 people doing that race, so I did actually win that one. But it was quite hard, you know, climbing the ladder. And I remember all the people I used to race against just in the northeast, and like climbing the little ladders. But eventually, like, you know, over time I got used to it and, like, you know, made my way towards the top. But it's really weird. I've kind of almost felt like I've climbed the ladder in terms of the junior career and got pretty good. And then I've kind of like started the year at some, you know, decent races. But once you join with the big boys, suddenly it's like you realise, you know, like I said before, you make one mistake, or you know, you're not quite on it. Suddenly, like, you know, the differences are huge, you know. Like, best day in the Super League, I'm coming 4th. Wow, amazing. Worst day, interestingly, when I was fittest, you know, like, God knows where I finished, like 19th or something in, you know, in Lyon. Like, it is so, like, up and down depending on where you get to. And I think, like, ultimately, like, for me, that's been the biggest change. Like, I think I've got very, very good at, like, knowing how to, like, win. And in my mindset, I was, like, very, very, like, you all will hear it no matter what field you're in. Like, I became very good at being outcome based. That was my, like, you know, I was outcome based. I mean, I remember sitting with you guys and I was like, I'm going to win. Like, that, you know, and it was a lot different at junior level. Whereas now it's, you know, I've had to learn it this year. It's like, whenever I kind of wanted to be outcome based this year, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to win, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Like, it never quite went the same way as when this year I was process orientated in terms of goals. And it's not to say that you don't have that same, you know, I've still got the same hunger to win, and, you know, I want to go to the Olympics, and you still want to win. But it's like, you've kind of got to do your time a bit and learn again how to, you know, get to the top. Because all these guys you mentioned, and like, yes, they're young, Hayden, Alex, etc. Even Leo, like, he's, you know, who won the World Champs this weekend, he's relatively young. But, you know, these guys are still taking quite a long time to get to where they are. So yeah, I think that for me has been the biggest thing, is it's like, you know, it's kind of a process-orientated outcome rather than a process-orientated, you know, outlook rather than having an outcome-based. And yeah, like, that's been huge. Because I mean, had you told me that a few years ago, I would have been like, nah, like, I'm gonna win. Like, that's not like the, you know, and it still very remains in there. But yeah, like, there was no process at all. Yeah, I mean, my dad knows this story. Woman, yeah, I went first ever, like, big British race I went to. You'll probably know the love of meeting in British Triathlon, and yeah, they took me downstairs for the meeting pre-race, and you know, tell us you know, like, what's your plan, like, all this. And I was like, yeah, I just want to win. And they were like, yeah, but how are you going to do it? Like, you know, how are you going to get the first boy and all this? And I was like, I don't know, I'll swim, like, fast. Like, it was so, I remember making up a load of crap just to, like, yeah, just kind of play the game a bit. But yeah, I have learned over time now, again, like, you know, it's so important to be process oriented, especially if you want to a sustainable career. Like getting to this level at 20, like there's a lot more years to be involved with it.
Answer your question?
What drives
Yeah, stand in front of your brother, Daniel.
Yeah, I told you. I'm not giving you the secrets.
So 20-year-old Dan, 20-year-old Tim, who's the winner on a sprint distance?
Well, actually, do you know what it is? We had the same bloody results in.
When I was 20,
Europeans the other day.
when I was 20, I was a world champion.
Yeah.
But it was the outcome. But it was different because from then it was from 17 to 20 was juniors, so it was a 4-year age group, non-drafting Olympic for the first 2 years because it was non-drafting the sport. So I was 17, racing against 20-year-olds, a guy called Craig Walton, who was as big as John Dennis, and yeah. First world champs, 1995, I was like 69th, like 10-15 minutes. But yeah, I still back myself.
Sadly, we can't go back.
No, we talk about that all night. It'll be close.
Yeah, so the Beijing not like being able to actually compete, what effect did that have on your mentality?
Oh, massive. Yeah, I mean, I was just like, well, what a waste, 4 years of my life. That, similar, talking about the processes, I was like, I just struggled. In fact, I then started to see a sports psychologist called Steve Peets, who's very famous now. And back then in 2008, we were doing the, Boris was my chimp. And, I went through a whole process and we were turning all my traffic lights. Yeah, it was, I mean, I didn't want to race, I wasn't sure. But we had London coming up and, I was like, well, if I'm in the best shape ever now, I just couldn't not comprehend, but I couldn't compute that through something out of my control, and we'd tried to have everything within our control as a unit, as a team, had an effect on the outcome. If I'd have crashed, or someone had crashed in front of me, that's a racing incident. If I'd have been stupid and gone down a descent like a crazy man in training. But for me, I really struggled with that, and to a degree, I wouldn't say I fell out of love with the sport, because I still love training, but I didn't have that passion. And yeah, definitely 2009 wasn't a very good year for me. It took me a long time to kind of warm up throughout the season. I still had to go through the processes, because by that stage it's my job, and I hadn't gone to bloody university, had I? So, thank God I didn't have social media then, but I still had sponsorship obligations. I still had federation, they want to know all of these things, your processes. So, but I was very much dealing with that and just going through the process, and it took a while. And again, I had a great team around me. I had Steve Peets, I had my wife Kelly, some training partners at the time, Fraser Cartmill, who's a Scottish athlete, who was GTN presenter. But yeah, it wasn't a case of I couldn't click a switch, because it meant so much to me. And again, it was the pressure, I guess. When I look back, it was like, God, we had to win that one because we hadn't won the one before. But then AJ had to win that one because Lessing hadn't won that one. So yeah, just what Alistair did in London, is just like, that's still one of the greatest races that someone's executed, I would say. So yeah, it was hard.
Do you think that had like a knock-on impact into you moving over into the longer distance?
I wasn't getting any younger. I was then starting to get niggles. I was a quick runner. I was a 28-minute 10K runner. I was a 3:46 1500 metre runner, 13:39 5K runner. But the game was getting quicker, and there was a lot of travelling. I had a family, by 2009. My daughter was born in 2009, and the great thing about 70.3 and Ironman is you don't race as much. Like you've been away 3 months now, or 2.5 months. My wife, I wouldn't have a wife. I wouldn't have a family. So that was a great thing about moving to America is the weather was a lot better. So I didn't have to travel as much. So yeah, that was one thing. And I genuinely had this deep desire. I wanted to go to Kona. I wanted to do an Ironman. As I said, when I started, it was, Greg Welsh. He was He was the world triathlon, and Ironman winner, and no one had ever done that before. And so kind of like that was definitely a decision. And I could see how good Alistair was, and bloody Johnny was in the wings, wasn't he?
Thanks.
Destined to be a domestique.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack, was it
Have you got any thoughts on kind of splitting into men's and women's?
Oh, I just think, I don't know if anyone knows.
Well,
what,
this is a preview right now.
Yeah.
This is very current.
I don't know if anyone's heard about what's happening with Kona. I think Ironman at 8 o'clock, I heard. I don't know which time zone they were going official. But this next year in Kona is going to be professional women and women age groupers. And the professional men and age groupers are going to race on the 10th of September in Nice. And then next year it's going to be the opposite. And I think they'll probably sign a contract for so many years. Yeah, I think I'm gutted. I mean, you know, as I said, you know, like if you ask Jan Frodeno, you go, oh, what year did you win Kona? You know, you don't say what year did you become the world champion. You know, you ask, you know, Alistair Brownlee that. And I just think, yeah, if you've got to split it, you've got to split it. I think splitting, just think of the sponsorship. You know, are the sponsors going to spend a load of money to do activations here? And then here, you know, it's logistics. Ironman is an amazing business model. I mean, they're $1 billion company. They're obviously doing something right. That's why we're all here. But in terms of custodians of the sport, looking after the age groupers and the professionals, I don't think they're the best. But they've got shareholders. So time will tell. I think eventually it will move off the island. That's inevitable. I don't think the island can sustain the demand, the need, the thirst for Ironman anymore. So it will be a shame. But yeah, we'll see.
Question coming from curiosity rather than trying to be controversial, but with doing Super League Triathlon in the likes of Neon, and we've got all the Qatar World Cup sort of stuff, what's the athlete perspective of the whole sort of sport washing concept? And
yeah, I mean, it's a topical and good question. I think people are saying if you don't do anything, then nothing will change. And I think what we can do as athletes is if there's an opportunity, is I think talking about it. You know, even talking about Bahrain Endurance, you know, they used to be called Bahrain Endurance 13. And if anyone knows the history, there were 13, I don't know if they were all journalists, but if you Googled Bahrain Endurance 13, it came up, you know, lots of humanitarian rights issues, but now it comes up lots of sports things. But yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, you know, everyone that we met there obviously was amazing. You know, the locals and the infrastructure was fantastic. Are they going to build that line? Absolutely not. It's not going to happen, I don't think. They're going to try. But yeah, I think, you know, we're all passionate about sport, and you know, I can, you know, if I didn't go, would I have changed anything? If Super League didn't go, would they have changed anything? I think that there is going to be change. It probably won't be in our generation. It's got to start somewhere, and you know, I think sport is such a politically maybe neutral kind of thing to kind of like, you know, be the catalyst for hopefully something that does. And you know, Super League are very proud that at the Arena Games in Singapore they had Saudi Arabia women racing actually in the Arena Games, and then we had 2 Saudi men racing in Neon. We didn't have any women just because they would have been lapped out, you know, before one lap of the bike, so that was just but they then went to Riyadh and they did lots of activations there. A very good friend of mine, he's now he's head of the Saudi Olympic Training Centre, so there is change in place, but it's going to take time. You know, I think yeah, we're never going to win. Someone can always be smarter than me. I'm not a politician by any means, but no, I hope that's.
It was certainly good when we were there, but it's yeah, I think you're quite far removed from you're treated so well that you almost forget, to be honest, what might even be going on. You know, it was. I mean, I will say, like from an athlete perspective, it was very, very good. I mean, you know, from you, I would imagine it was the same. You know, it was definitely a unique experience being around no civilization in the middle of, you know, Saudi Arabia. It was, yeah, an odd place, but yeah, like you say, I mean, it's going to take time for things to change. I mean, I think from the people, certainly the people that we heard from there, they're at least trying to make steps in the right direction. Certainly from a triathlon's perspective as well, actually. And yeah, I mean, the fact that even simple things, the fact that, you know, the women were allowed to go there and race and actually be, you know, just, you know, wear what they want and all that kind of thing. It was.
We had an Israeli athlete race.
Yeah, I know, that was.
Yeah, and he flew direct from. We all flew on a charter plane from Brussels there. He flew directly there with his Israeli coach. he competed.
Not that it wasn't nerve-wracking.
It was very
watching
nerve-wracking at the airport.
Yeah, it was.
You know, I think the only other, like, you know, similar to, was it Biden who flew directly from Israel to somewhere in Saudi Arabia? Yeah, but again, you know, so they are trying to build bridges. How, you know, got to maybe not a bridge, a stream, or, you know, whatever. But yeah,
I agree with the line of that thing ain't getting built.
no. But you know, and for the athletes, I felt for them because they're there. Once they're there, they want to do the best. They want to win the race. You know, there's, you know, they're putting themselves. People can put them in a difficult position. It's too late for that. The talk should have happened before they. You know, the armband with the World Cup should have happened months ago. Not, you know, putting pressure on all the captains and the rest of the team. But I don't want to, you know, offend anyone. Sorry.
What's the most important piece of kit in racing or training, or your favourite piece of kit?
My Wahoo watch, my on shoes. I think everyone loves bikes. Like, you know, I'm very fortunate that I get bikes before they come out. When the Shib was designed, I was in the wind tunnel before anyone knew about it. You know, being involved in that development. The shoes that everyone know about, Gustav's shoes that he won in Kona, they are my shoes. We were in Munich at Super League, and Maria, the on sports marketing, she says, he's got no more shoes in his size, you're the same size, what condition are your racing flats in? And I was like, yeah, no, they're okay. So a courier came to my hotel, took them to Switzerland, shaved the bottom off, and, you know, it's just being involved in things like that. Back in the day, it was, when I won the World Champs in 1998, I had this hot pant all-in-one thing with silver down the side, and it's shark skin, which didn't exist then. You know, it's just, wow, the first athlete to race in shark. Yeah, for me, I just love that. It's an innovative sport across, you know, everything. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean, it's been awesome for me because I've been, yeah, like everything's accelerated pretty quick at the minute.
You're spraying stuff in your mouth now.
Yeah, I know. Also, yeah, it's God, I mean, you can just about go to any lengths now, can't you? I mean, the shoes are, it's hard to look past the feel in a carbon shoes, isn't it? I mean, I do wonder how much faster you would have been.
So I would have definitely beaten, because I didn't have carbon shoes.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's not much piece to, just the sensation of that, and yeah, like you say, the bikes, I mean, bloody hell, the bikes are fast now, and just good fun, like, you can't really beat it, can you? Everything's faster. I think that's the big thing, isn't it? Everything's faster, no matter what it is.
When I was younger, we had 19mm tyres. I'd pump up to 140 psi, and literally you're back on spinachy wheels, which are, you look bounce and go, yeah, this is really fun, this is really fun. And now we're, what is it? The new zip wheels. I think max is like 70 max. People are riding. All the women are riding them in Super League. The zip wheels and the GP 5000.
Yeah, that's what I use. Yeah, 5000.
Everyone's riding like 50 psi. It's mad.
Yeah, that's what I ran. It was like,
it's being involved in that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's really good.
It's been really hard getting used to that, because I mean, I was the same. Like when I started on tubulars, and like, I mean, obviously we knew no different, but my dad and we would always just pump. As soon as I got to a race, I'd always do them as hard as possible.
Yeah.
Flick it and be like, make a noise and that, and like, getting that perspective out your head now. I used to race at 120, and now it's like 50. It's super, you know, Graham, the mechanic in Super League, he's like, "Oh, it'll be fine now." I'm like, but it feels really soft. And he's like, "No, it's faster." And like, yeah, you're racing it sound, but yeah, breaking that perspective of the past is difficult. But yeah, no, it's good.
It's all a kit.
The bikes.
Yeah.
Is that a bit like the first time in cyclocross, Daniel? Pump your tyres up?
Oh yeah. I mean, that was just because we had no knowledge. But God, I raced like.
You're sliding all over.
Oh yeah, we pumped it so hard, and that was a mistake.
Yeah, on the bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, hi. How do you find it sort of racing in Super League as part of a team? Again, sort of racing on your own?
Come on, Tim.
Not with his manager here.
Yeah, better say the right things or I want selected next year. Yeah, no, it was first time where I've like seen it really be like a more team sport. I mean, I'm definitely like still. I really like to try and kind of keep that, I guess, old school view, as you called it, Tim, of like I like the individual racing and World Triathlon being like individual. And I love the fact to have a relay. Like, it's awesome to be able to do that. But Super League's interesting because of the way it's developed, and it used to be, you know, only individual, but now with the team, I mean, ultimately, it's hard to look past the team element because, I mean, like, you know, it's no secret, the most money is involved with the team, you know, and like, obviously as a team, like, you're all going out to work together to try and like benefit each other. And yeah, like that created a blooming interesting dynamic, didn't it? Again, it was quite confusing, but short shoots and fastest laps and, you know, all this.
And
And
even on the bike, yourself and Emil, who's
the
really short Danish athlete, you know, Dan and him definitely got on, and there was times where they were working together and they had, and it was probably I guarantee you wouldn't have probably got to know him, A, but B, you wouldn't have necessarily worked as fluid and other teams, you know.
But we spend a lot of time as a team as well. Like, you end up getting you room with your team. I mean, we have obviously team meetings with Tim all the time, and like you.
WhatsApp group.
Yeah, no, WhatsApp groups and everything. Yeah, Tim was down there at the course before, like showing you how wet it was on the ground and all this stuff. But it's an interesting feeling, and actually I really enjoyed it. Like, I think it took a lot of pressure off, but equally, like, you know, there was plenty of time. The women always raced first, and quite often our women had a lot of, like, I mean, bad luck basically, like just some really bad luck, and it meant that, like, when we went on, we were like under a lot of pressure to perform as a team, and like it's interesting as it goes through the series. But the fact that you can kind of work with your teammates a bit, you know, and like get to the end. I mean, there's not many people actually make it through to the last round on each race, you know, like, so if you can. That was why me and Emil were working together, you know, like, you just make it through to the end, and then you try and, you know, get your position. And like, if you get an individual kind of top 10 and you make a bit of money, and great, but like, ultimately you're trying to like get your top 3 across the line and get some points. So yeah, it was good fun.
And all the teams are equal, while in World Triathlon, Flora's never going to have domestiques. Well, there were always, you know, 5 men or 4 women, you know, everyone had the same amount of people, and there was a relatively fair draft, kind of like to
all the Bahrain, you know, sponsored athletes just happen to end up in Bahrain. Oddly.
Apart from Macca.
How does the draft work for that?
So we did so the first time we just did a snake draft the first year. So if I picked first, second, third, fourth, then the person who picked, fifth, they picked then the next one. So it kind of goes. And we did the same for this year, but we could retain 1 male and 1 female if we wanted. The problem with me is I had no males that were racing from last year. But then this year, because they were trying to get corporate sponsors for the team, Bahrain put a couple of $100K into that team. But the deal was everyone who was sponsored by them. So they had Cassandra and Georgia, which would have never happened in a draft, because one of them would have been retained or picked, and then someone else would have got her. But apart from that, it was a...
So is it one pool with all the men and women in, and then you do...
We do women first, and then men, or vice versa. So you do them separately.
Oh, yeah.
Would you rather do the bike on a mountain bike or the running Crocs?
Well, hold on.
An Ironman for Tim and then an Olympian for Dan.
You do quick transitions in a Crocs, and some do. There's a world record for a half Ironman, and it's like under 170, under 110.
It's an hour.
I think
it depends what you're looking at, doesn't it? Because it's not all going fast or actually surviving than an Ironman and Crocs, I think.
I reckon I'd go for a mountain bike, because I'd change the tyres. I'd go for a hardtail, maybe even no suspension. I'd cheat. No, I wouldn't. I'd go for a mountain bike, not Crocs. I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Not even Spotman.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't know, George, just give it a go in the Crocs and see how it goes.
You have a good lead.
You know, they make like carbon plated Crocs.
But especially technical on the bike, you can go so much quicker on a road bike.
Yeah.
Happening in a video. That's definitely happening in a video.
Oh yeah.
If you could go back and to the first race you've ever done, what advice would you give yourself now?
I think, do you know, in swimming pools, as you went in, they had the machine on the wall, and I think you put 20p in, and you got some dextro sweets, glucose sweet. Maybe half the young people don't. So I had Scott Tinley swimming trunks on, and they had a pocket inside, and I needed to eat and drink, so I got some of these like dextro energy orange flavour, and I put them in my pocket. So I did, and it was a swimming pool place, so I did my swim, and I got out of swim like, what the hell is all this orange? Because they're very soluble with water, because they're just sugar. So I would tell myself, don't do that. You look like a plonker.
I think so.
Oh, I'm not going to be able to do that.
True story.
I'm still learning. Yeah, well, man, I wouldn't even know.
That was the first one you did?
Darlington race, yeah. Fuck. Honestly, it's been so long since I've raced that I can't even think for it.
It's that long ago.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I think more like, yeah, just kind of from that first race, I would say just like keeping with it and like actually seeing that like ultimately you can go from, I remember running around the bloody field there and like falling over and all sorts, so definitely wear some better shoes, but yeah, just the fact that you can end up going from a crappy school field in Darlington and actually making it, but yeah, honestly it's not going to beat the Dextro tablets, is it? So.
Yeah, hi.
Can you tell us how you'd fuel or go about nutrition in an Ironman?
Yeah, it's definitely the fourth discipline without a doubt. Yeah, so for me, I use I take 70 grams of carbohydrate an hour, and then depending how hot it is, I take about 800 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium, but that's equally. But I have to front load it because the longer I'm out there, the less my body wants to absorb. So, so for the first hour, I will take probably 120 grams, then 100, and I go down like that. But also, to be fair, the preparation starts probably 3 days out. So for me, I eat the same meal, I rice, fish, like just plain and sweet potato, and then I would have that like 3 days in a row. So you really want lots of liquid, lots of sodium. And for me, right now, I use Science and Sport Beta Fuel, but it's whatever. Don't train on something and like race on something different. But I definitely think now that the thought is more than less. When I first started 70.3, I was taking 2 gels in a 70.3, and that was only like 2014. The advancement in that, obviously what Morton have brought into it, and just that Scratch Labs is another big one in America. Just the understanding of what the body can actually absorb. But then you've got to find your limits, and you want to be right as much as possible, so you can feel. And don't go to caffeine too early.
Yeah.
Do not do that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Even in the Olympic, they're taking Norwegians have 2 320 mixes for an Olympic distance in the bottles. I mean, that's 160 grams in the space of 55 minutes. It's
Flora had 2.
crazy.
She had, I suppose, she had a gel and then a caffeine gel. I don't know what she had in a bottle. But
yeah, the amount that they tolerate now is just.
But again, you can train your gut to absorb it over time, and through doing their Ironman, they've had to do that.
So do you tend to mix it with like solid food? And
I know I have gels,
okay.
And then like they do like an energy drink mix. A Beta Fuel is like a mixture.
Okay.
I've had a power bar back in the day, and I had to stop on the run and go to the toilet. Just didn't work for me. But yeah. But if you do, this is Joe Skipper started this. He's a good Joe Skipper. If you're having a really bad race and doing an Ironman, take all the Morton gels because they're bloody expensive, and they give them free away at all the aid stations. But hopefully, you have a good race. Because you've got the nutrition right.
Morton are not going to want to hear that on the live stream,
how often do you try new stuff? Or do you feel like you're messing with a winning formula if you do?
Sorry, use what, sorry?
How often do you like try new things in training, or try like a new method, or? or like you were saying, pump your tyre to 50 psi or something like that?
Yeah. To me, I would say at the minute, for me especially, like the amount of different kind of races that I'm going through, especially at the minute, like I'll play around with things a lot, but I would say there's definitely principles that are kept the same pretty fundamentally. The only time I wouldn't is like into a big race, like, you know, like going into a world champs and stuff like that. You're not gonna go and like mess around with like a new plan or whatever like 3 weeks out, you know. But I think ultimately, like as we've discussed, like technology, you know, like I mean generally like anything, like nutrition, strength and conditioning, everything's improving at such a rate that like if you don't kind of get on that train and like experiment things and figure out what works for you, then I think like, you know, you kind of missing a trick. And it's not to say that everything will work for you, is it? Like, you know, everyone's individual. But yeah, I think if you're not trying out new things, then you could lose a competitive edge, because like at the top end of the sport at the minute, it's more than they used to talk about 1%ers. I mean, they are looking for 0.1%ers now. It's absolutely unbelievable, you know.
There were 4,000 points Leo Boucher got. I think Alex was 21 points behind
21 points, yeah.
4,000. Ice vests. When I was with the federation, we put our hands in ice cold water, but now it's evolved to this, to that. My bike position, you know, used to be up like this. Now it's lower, higher. You know, man.
They can do what the Norwegians are doing and looking at their own feces and
all that. You got to innovate or die, like without a doubt. That's like it's not the 1%ers, the 2%ers. It's the 0.5%ers that make the difference.
Hi.
Obviously, we're sort of talking a lot about sort of physical health and sort of training and everything, but what do you do to look after your mental health as athletes?
I mean, for me, this is something that became huge this year. I'm like really fortunate that I got to like meet some people within Red Bull, and they actually provided me like it was quite a search actually, but like I got the opportunity to like basically look through different psychologists and like kind of almost interview them in a way. And yeah, like I managed to find a psychologist who really clicked for me. So I mean, that's obviously been that's a very big piece of the puzzle. But I think it's like bouncing off those around you. I mean, like I mean, even within Super League, it's not like I've got my psychologist like, you know, traveling around with me. It's like, you know, just like things that can get to you and stuff. Like you've got people like Tim there as a team manager. Like you've got your coaches. You've always got your family on the phone and stuff like that. Like I think it's really. I mean, the biggest message, just for sure, is just like to talk. You know, like generally when you're talking about things, like, you know, things get resolved a fair bit quicker. When you don't, that's when you run into the problems. But I think it's ever evolving. And I mean, as you know, like at the top of the sport, like, you know, everyone's doing these 1%ers, everyone's training 30-35 hours a week. Like, you know, it starts to become where like the psychology is so important to like, you know, then, you know, taking your performance to a different level. And I mean, I'm sure you've experienced that the whole way through. It's evolving.
It's who you surround yourself with, and having the confidence and feel comfortable to talk to them. Sometimes it's not a sports psychologist, it is maybe a masseur or physio. Right now for me, it's kids. You know, I've got being a taxi driver, they get to talk to everyone. I feel like a taxi driver in the evenings, going from here to there, and it's having that balance that really helps me. Helps me now. I'm not quite at a, you know, I don't want to go to the Olympics or be world champion anymore, so it is very much a lot more relaxed for me. But definitely, you know, when I was developing in the sport, it didn't exist. You know, if you showed weakness, then you were weak. You know. But now I think we're learning that you can use your mind it's a muscle just as much as the rest of your body. And if you surround yourself with great coaches, the physiological side as well as the mental side, then without a doubt, you know, the mind's a powerful thing. You open it up, you'd be amazed what the body can do. And I think it's finding someone who feels comfortable, and what works for me might not work, you know, what the process that works for me might not work for other people, but it's a massive part. And the pressure now, 20-year-old, he's doing Super League, he's gone to the Com Games, he's, you know, one of 4 guys that could, you know, take so Johnny and Alex Yee out. He's one of 4 guys that is going to get, only one of them's going to get the spot, but they're going to have amazing careers. You know, there'll be another race, so I think it's so important now, especially now with social media. When I was younger, it was like, Once a month, I wanted to be in 220. Yes, this is Tim Don 4th. But now it's like, if we don't do a selfie at the end of this did not happen. Okay? You know, it is literally, oh, look, they're on the track. Oh, I thought they were injured, and oh, they're playing. You know, like, so, yeah.
I guess you didn't have that growing up, did you? Like, that was the thing, growing up for me, it's like, you just know it. You virtually know everything about
My
what
first
everyone else
mobile
is doing.
phone, I think, when I was 19. Like, yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah. Maybe we've just got one more question. If there is one before, we need to draw a raffle out to give away some swag.
Not too late to buy tickets.
Not too late to buy tickets. If no one's got anything else to ask, we'll maybe get these guys to draw some numbers out. And we can... so if you've got your tickets to hand...
Come here, very, very
Please tell me...
It is on label, but it's 20%.
How do you stop it? We need 10 times the home, 10 times the price. That'd be alright.